to put an even more impressive bow on what Jen has been saying about how there is absolutely no compromising whatsoever with Zios. And this is, again, the issue at bar here, because they have, forget if it's a 3-week grace period, forget if it's a 3-month grace period, we are talking 2.5 fucking years now that this genocide is going on, and they've expanded it into southern Lebanon, and that is exactly what they're doing there. They are doing it in Sudan. They are doing it in the Congo. They are doing it in Myanmar. And as far as I'm concerned, this is only going to continue until we basically make them persona non grata across the globe. And that is what needs to happen. And if you need any further proof that we're correct about this, Colin, please pull up the story about Israelis wanting to continue, start up, and accelerate the war with Iran. They don't want to stop.
No.
They want more.
Okay, so for anybody that was ever commenting about giving these people peace when they're out just enjoying a day, no.
Israeli, according to the New Yorker, Israeli voters are against a ceasefire with Iran and think Netanyahu has not gone far enough. Not far enough.
Really? In Iran.
Now, keep in mind.
You know what I want to say to these guys? Fly, Icarus, fly. Please keep just poking at Iran even more. Please. I honestly,
you know what the hard reality is for so many people who don't understand our visceral hatred towards these low-life, inhuman pieces of scum.
Seriously,
the people that are being polled here, I guarantee you, I don't know if it's 100%, but let's just assume that it is pretty damn close to 100% of the people polled are not anybody who is actually putting their lives on the line to fight Iran. They want other people to do this for them, and that is who is being polled. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, of course it is. And again, I will say this. Yes, there are a few redeemable people in Israel that are on the right side of history. They do exist. But those people, they understand the rage and the hate that the world has against their nation. That's why they are also standing up. So the percentage is high. The percentage of psychopathy is high. Very high.
Colin, can you please pull up the article? The extremes of Israeli public opinion. Israeli voters are against a ceasefire with Iran and think Netanyahu has not gone far enough. Look at that shit. And just can you scroll up a little higher?
This is a New Yorker, so let's take
it with a grain of salt, but scroll up a little higher, Colin. This is Netanyahu at the backdrop of a completely blown up area. Is it in Iran? I don't know where it is, but all I know is that if there's one thing we know about Netanyahu, he loves imagery. He loves the cameras. He loves making a good impression. This is one of them. So let's keep going. Since the U.S. and Israel attacked Iran at the end of February, more than 3,000 Iranians have died, and the global economy is now at risk of heading into a recession. You think? But unlike in the U.S., where the war has hurt Trump's political standing, the war remains popular in Israel. Israel, following rocket fire from Hezbollah, has also invaded southern Lebanon. 1,800 Lebanese have been killed that we know of.
Again, I'm on this. I'm going to go with my 10 times, sort of like, for me, whatever they say, I'm going to multiply it by 10.
Safe assumption.
Yeah. And I'll stand corrected if that ever is shown, but I just don't believe this.
To better understand the state of public opinion in Israel, I recently spoke by phone with Dalia Schneidlin, a polling expert. Schneidlin is a policy fellow at the Century Foundation, a columnist for Haaretz, and the author of The Crooked Timber of Democracy in Israel. During our conversation, which was edited for length and clarity, we discussed why Jewish Israelis are opposed to a ceasefire despite thinking the war is not going well. So, the complicated political calculations facing Netanyahu and why so much of the Israeli public thinks military force is the only way to solve international problems. Yeah, that's a great question, Eddie. Keep going.
They're just sons. They're sons, guys. It's not like any big conspiracy. I'm not sending signals to anybody. They're just sons because our theme was sun for a long time. So I have sun earrings. I'm not, there's no secret voodoo going on. No one has to figure out what my earrings are saying. They're just
Scroll
suns.
up for a second, Colin. I need that line. How would you describe the way Israelis feel about the war with Iran? There is great disappointment in the ceasefire. I think of myself as somebody who's pretty in touch with Israeli public opinion, but even I was surprised to find out that only about a third of Israelis support the ceasefire. And that support is primarily driven by the Arab population because the Jewish population is particularly against it. Keep in mind another Jewish trope about, we'll have other people fight for us, so that's why we're in favor of it. The reason that was really surprising to me is that everybody was living through what felt like a nightmare for almost 6 weeks of war. And it's pretty much all anybody could think about. You can't live under the constant threat of incoming ballistic missile fire anywhere at any time. You have to change everything, where you go, where you don't go, schools closed, shops closed, theaters closed, no traffic on the roads because people don't really go out. Some people's homes were damaged, and some people lost their lives. But I think we saw in the surveys was a very strong conviction that the war had not succeeded in its aims, which frankly, it doesn't take a political analyst or expert to know, because Netanyahu had quite clearly stated the aims of the war, and they quite clearly were not achieved. So what aims are you referring to? Prime Minister was conveying rather clearly, even if not always explicitly, that he wanted the Iranian regime to collapse. Yeah, no luck there. And the aim of Israel's military actions against Iran has always been to destroy its nuclear weapons program, which the Prime Minister takes for granted, and to destroy its ballistic missile capabilities. Again, dumb. And there was often the goal of incapacitating Iran's axis of resistance, what we often call its proxy network. He didn't talk about the last one as much that this time, but it's sort of implicit in a lot of people's minds because he had talked about it so much in the past. And because Hezbollah joined that war very quickly, probably at Iran's request, which gave Israel the excuse that needed to unleash a much more severe assault against Hezbollah. None of these aims have been achieved.
First of all, Ziohel never needs an excuse to attack anybody. They don't even need an excuse. They don't care. So
Jen,
I don't, that's just silly.
Jen, if you would.
Looking at a recent U.S. public opinion poll, I noticed that the ceasefire was popular while war is not. I imagine many Americans would like the war to stop because they think it is failing. You seem to be saying that Israel has also not achieved its aims, but that the people want the war to continue at a similar or great intensity. Is that accurate? It's as accurate as I can say. I haven't had time to do focus groups and really find out what is behind this. It's a completely new situation. But the way I see it is that it is a bind for Netanyahu because we already saw that after 1 month of the war, support for it was falling in Israel. It was still very high. Remember, the war started with practically a consensus among the Jewish population. The average level of support from the Israeli population overall was over 80% because the Arab population supported it at much lower rates. Well, yeah. But the Jewish population had a sweeping consensus of over 90% support in the first 2 weeks. But by the end of a month, that support was declining. Even among Israeli Jews, it was below 80%, and the overall weighted average was only about 2/3. When you say weighted average, you mean the whole population, Jewish and Muslim and everyone else?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I use these technical terms only because the Jewish and the Palestinian citizens of Israel are so different on this issue. If there were minor variations, I would just say Israelis.
So
You could,
you're saying that the popularity of the war is falling, perhaps, falling, perhaps as a reflection of the war not being successful. But at the same time, support is still pretty high, and most people don't want a ceasefire.
exactly.
Exactly.
That's
Okay.
what I'm
Okay.
calling Netanyahu's point, because on the one hand, he was losing support for the war, and it's also is not reflective well on him. Personally, he got no political boost. Not him, not his party, not his government. There was a very, very slight lift for his party in the beginning.
Can I
But
ask
not
you
for his,
what accent do you think you're doing?
but not for his coalition. And then by the fourth week, he wasn't doing well. Their solution was to at least continue the war because maybe it would achieve its goals.
What accent is that? Who are you being?
It's almost as if Israelis don't think or know about any other option besides war for how to achieve political or strategic security aims, because theirs has always been a complete delegitimation and undermining of diplomacy to the point where most Israelis don't even think that it exists. So if you are Netanyahu, you are in a bind. And if you're just some other Israeli politician and you want to be a leader, you could try and transform that attitude by relegitimating diplomacy or some vision, whatever it may be. But that would take leadership.
Okay, James, you're being way too gracious on that. All right.
But that would take leadership, and that would take courage. That would take bold vision. That would take somebody who is willing to take political criticism for the sake of standing by his or her convictions. And so far, we don't have any political leaders who have suggested anything like an alternative path on Iran.
All right, you guys, all of you are wrong. I don't know what it is. I don't know what you're doing. You're hilarious. It's reminding me of Maud Lebowski, Julianne Moore in The Big Lebowski.
I can't possibly think I saw
No, you can't do the accent, but it doesn't sound like that. But the premise is it isn't anything.
Yeah.
Julianne Moore made it up. Maud Lebowski's accent is no accent at all. That's what makes me think of what you're doing. Like that's why nobody could guess what it is. You're
Colin,
just,
how much longer?
Sort of like Martin Short in Father of the Bride, where it was no accent. He just made the whole thing up, and it was awesome.
Frank?
Yes, that was Martin Short. That was very clearly the case. It was no particular accent. He made it up. That's why it was so funny. And so much of the time, he would do it like ad lib in the thing, which I'm sure cracked them up to no end.
Well, I think we kind of got the gist of what the story's all about, which is effectively, as we've said before, they are in favor of any war that does not involve them getting their hands dirty. As long as somebody else is doing the wet work, if you will, they are totally fine with it. And what they're finding out is that, as we have been pointing out, the disconnect in that culture from the rest of the world is truly remarkable. Like, they are truly insulated from the rest of the world.
Yes.
And what is ultimately going to be the outcome of this nightmare is that when it eventually becomes, when the rubber meets the road, where their entire country is collapsing, they're never going to be able to wrap their head around it. They are so ill prepared for their collapse. It is going to be so much worse than anything happens here in the States, because tens of millions of people in this country are actually prepared for the U.S. to collapse. The people that are in Israel,
they're screwed.
Yeah, in Israel, they really have no idea. Like, they really don't.